Marcus, you're getting the promotion, Sarah announced, her voice cutting through the Monday morning stillness of our Seattle tech office. I felt my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips as she continued. The board was impressed by his leadership qualities and natural charisma. What Sarah didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 3 weeks, Marcus would be sitting in a federal courthouse facing charges for embezzling over $200,000 from our previous clients. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I've been a senior systems architect at CloudBridge Solutions for 4 years. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, of pulling all-nighters to fix critical infrastructure failures, of being the person everyone called when the servers crashed at 2 a.m. 4 years of watching less qualified colleagues get promoted while I was told I needed to work on my executive presence and communication style. Marcus Chen had joined our team 18 months ago with a killer smile, an expensive suit collection, and what our CEO Sarah Mitchell called natural leadership instincts. What he didn't have was technical expertise. In our first team meeting, he'd asked if we could just turn off the firewall temporarily to speed up a client demo. I'd had to explain, gently, that security protocols existed for a reason. He'd laughed it off, called me our resident security guru, and somehow made it sound like both a compliment and a dismissal. The morning of the promotion announcement, I sat in Sarah's corner office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. The space still smelled like her morning lavender latte, and I could see the ferry boats cutting white trails across the gray water. I'd imagined sitting in this office so many times, discussing strategy, making decisions that would shape our company's future. I never imagined I'd be sitting here being told why I wasn't good enough. Elena, you're incredibly talented, Sarah said, arranging papers that didn't need arranging. Your technical skills are unmatched, and your work on the Peterson Industries migration was flawless. I waited for the but that was coming. But Marcus brings something different to the table. He has this ability to make people feel heard, to rally the team around shared goals. Leadership isn't just about technical competence. I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral while my mind cataloged every time Marcus had taken credit for my solutions. Every client meeting where he'd fumbled basic technical questions and I'd had to step in with answers. Just last month, he'd presented my entire proposal for the healthcare client's compliance framework as his own idea, complete with my original diagrams and my carefully researched regulatory citations. I understand, I said finally. When does the transition begin? Immediately. Marcus will be taking over the Morrison account, and we'd like you to support him during the handoff. The Morrison account, the one I'd spent 8 months nurturing, from a struggling startup to a thriving client relationship worth $500,000 annually, the account where I'd personally trained their entire IT team and built custom security protocols that had prevented 3 separate breach attempts. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I walked back to my desk through the open plan office, past the motivational posters about innovation and collaborative excellence. My colleagues looked up briefly, offering sympathetic smiles before quickly returning to their screens. Tech companies love to talk about meritocracy, about how the best ideas win. But everyone knew that charm and confidence often mattered more than competence. My workspace was organized with the same precision I brought to everything else. Monitors arranged at perfect angles, cables managed and labeled, a small succulent plant that somehow thrived despite the artificial lighting. On my desk sat a framed photo of my daughter Sophia, now 15, taken at her science fair, where she'd won first place for a project on network security vulnerabilities. She'd inherited my analytical mind, but thankfully, not my willingness to be overlooked. That afternoon, Marcus stopped by my desk with his trademark grin. Elena, heard you'll be helping me get up to speed on Morrison. Really appreciate you being such a team player about this. He perched on the edge of my desk like we were old friends, completely oblivious to the fact that he was now my supervisor, despite having less experience, fewer qualifications, and a tendency to CC the entire company on emails that should have been private conversations. Of course, I replied. I've prepared a comprehensive handoff document. It includes client history, technical specifications, ongoing projects, and contact information for key stakeholders. Awesome. You know what, though? I think what Morrison really needs is a fresh perspective. Sometimes being too close to an account can limit your vision. You know, I'm thinking we shake things up a bit, really show them what dynamic leadership looks like. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Morrison Industries wasn't just any client. They were a mid-sized manufacturing company that had trusted me to modernize their entire digital infrastructure. Their CEO, Janet Morrison, was a no-nonsense woman who valued reliability above all else. She'd told me multiple times that CloudBridge was the first tech company that hadn't tried to oversell her on flashy solutions she didn't need. Marcus Morrison is pretty conservative when it comes to changes. They value stability and proven approaches. Maybe we should discuss any major modifications with Janet before implementing them? He waved me off. Elena, you're thinking like a technician, not a leader. Trust me, I've got this. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks to drive growth. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched with growing unease as Marcus began implementing his, quote, fresh perspective. He scheduled unnecessary meetings with Morrison's executives, pitched expensive add-on services they hadn't requested, and started making changes to their security protocols without proper testing. When I tried to raise concerns, he dismissed them as resistance to change. The breaking point came when Marcus decided to demonstrate proactive leadership by upgrading Morrison's entire database system during business hours, despite my explicit warnings about potential downtime. I was in the middle of code review when my phone started buzzing with calls from Morrison's IT director. Elena, what the hell is happening? Our entire customer database is offline, and Marcus isn't answering his phone. I rushed to Marcus's office, but he was in the break room, leisurely making coffee while our client's business ground to a halt. Marcus, Morrison is down. We need to implement the rollback procedures immediately. Relax, Elena. Growing pains are normal during major upgrades. They'll thank us when they see the improved performance. Their entire sales team can't access customer records. They're losing money every minute the system is down. He finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation, but instead of taking responsibility, he threw me under the bus. Well, you were supposed to be monitoring the transition. Why didn't you catch this earlier? I spent the next 14 hours rebuilding Morrison's database from backup, coordinating with their team, and personally apologizing to Janet Morrison for the disruption. Marcus left at 5:30 for a networking event, telling me he had full confidence in my ability to handle the technical stuff. That night, I sat in my home office with a cup of chamomile tea, staring at my laptop screen. Sophia was at her desk across the room, working on calculus homework with the same focused intensity I recognized in myself. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the heater and the occasional sound of her pencil scratching against paper. Mom, you look tired, she said, without looking up from her equations. Just a long day at work, Mija. Is it that Marcus guy again? The one who got your promotion? I'd tried to shield Sophia from my work frustrations, but teenagers are perceptive. It's complicated. She set down her pencil and turned to face me. Mom, remember when I was 12 and Tommy Hernandez kept taking credit for my science project ideas? You told me that sometimes the best response to unfairness isn't to fight harder in the same broken system, but to build something better. Her words hit me like a revelation. I'd been so focused on proving myself within CloudBridge's hierarchy that I'd forgotten my own advice. For months, I'd been documenting every slight, every stolen idea, every instance of being overlooked. I had screenshots of emails, saved versions of documents, timestamps showing who had created what and when. I'd been building a case without realizing it. But more importantly, I'd been building something else entirely. For the past year, during evenings and weekends, I'd been developing a comprehensive security audit system that could identify vulnerabilities across multiple network architectures simultaneously. What had started as a side project to solve problems I encountered at work had evolved into something potentially revolutionary. The system could perform real-time threat assessment, predict security breaches based on user behavior patterns, and automatically implement countermeasures without disrupting normal operations. I'd tested it on several volunteer networks, including Sophia's school district, and the results had been remarkable. 0 successful breach attempts in 8 months of monitoring. 3 days after the Morrison disaster, I was called into Sarah's office again. This time, Marcus was there too, looking significantly less confident than usual. Sarah's expression was grave. "Elena, we need to discuss what happened with Morrison Industries. Marcus has explained that there were some communication breakdowns during the database migration." I listened as Marcus spun a narrative that painted me as an uncooperative team member who had failed to properly support his leadership during a challenging transition. According to his version of events, I had been resistant to innovation and hadn't adequately prepared the client for necessary changes. "Janet Morrison called me personally," Sarah continued. "She was very upset about the downtime and the lack of communication from our team leadership." "What did she say specifically?" I asked. Sarah consulted her notes. She said, and I quote, "Marcus seems more interested in selling us things we don't need than understanding our actual requirements. Elena saved our business, but she shouldn't have had to clean up someone else's mess." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Janet's old school. She's resistant to change. And she has this attachment to Elena because they've worked together for so long. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions as a leader, even when they're initially unpopular." I remained silent, letting Marcus dig his own grave with every word. Sarah turned to me. "Elena, I need your perspective on what happened." The database migration was scheduled for after business hours, specifically to avoid downtime. Marcus made an executive decision to move it to during business hours to demonstrate responsiveness to the client. When I expressed concerns about potential issues, he told me that leadership sometimes requires taking calculated risks. When the system failed, I implemented the recovery procedures we had discussed during the planning phase. And the recovery took 14 hours because the backup systems hadn't been properly configured for the new architecture. That was something I had flagged in my handoff documentation as requiring additional testing before implementation. Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Marcus, did you review Elena's handoff documentation?" I skimmed it, but honestly, it was pretty technical. I thought it was more important to focus on the big picture strategy rather than getting bogged down in operational details. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked between us, and I could see her beginning to understand the true scope of what had happened. "Elena, Janet Morrison has requested that you be reassigned as their primary contact. She's also asked for a detailed analysis of our internal processes to ensure this type of disruption doesn't happen again." Marcus's face went pale. "Sarah, I think that's a mistake. As the senior leader on this account, I should be handling the relationship with their executives. We can't let clients dictate our internal team structure. Marcus, the client is paying us $500,000 annually for reliable service. Right now, they trust Elena to deliver that service, and they don't trust us to manage their account properly. That's a problem we need to fix." I watched Marcus realize that his charm and confidence weren't enough to overcome the consequences of his incompetence. For the first time since joining CloudBridge, he looked genuinely worried. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and began typing a different kind of document than any I'd written before. Not a technical specification or a project proposal, but a business plan. My security audit system wasn't just a side project anymore. It was the foundation for something bigger. I'd been thinking small, trying to fit my innovations into CloudBridge's existing structure. But what if I stopped trying to fix a broken system and built something new instead? I called my friend Rachel Kim, who worked in venture capital. We'd met in graduate school and had stayed in touch over the years. She was one of the few people who understood both the technical and business sides of enterprise software. "Elena, it's late. Everything okay?" "Rachel, I need to ask you something hypothetical. If someone had developed a security system that could prevent cyber attacks before they happened, what would that be worth to the market?" There was a pause. "Are we talking about predictive threat modeling or something more advanced?" "Something more advanced. Real-time behavioral analysis, automated response protocols, and learning algorithms that get smarter with each attempted breach. Elena, systems like that are theoretical. The computing power alone would be prohibitive, and the false positive rates would make them impractical for most businesses." What if they weren't theoretical? What if someone had solved those problems? Another pause, longer this time. than that someone would be sitting on a technology worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Elena, please tell me you're not calling me at 11 p.m. to discuss a hypothetical scenario. I need to show you something. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? The next morning, I met Rachel at a small cafe in Capitol Hill, away from the corporate bustle of downtown Seattle. I brought my laptop and a detailed presentation I'd prepared during the early hours of the morning. Rachel was already there when I arrived, looking both curious and concerned. Before you show me anything, she said, I need to know if this involves your current employer's intellectual property. Everything I'm about to show you was developed on my own time, using my own equipment, solving problems that CloudBridge never asked me to solve. I have documentation proving independent development, and I've already filed provisional patents for the core algorithms. Rachel's eyebrows rose. You filed patents? Elena, what exactly have you been working on? I opened my laptop and walked her through the system. Her expression shifted from skeptical to interested to amazed as I demonstrated real-time threat detection, showed her the behavioral analysis algorithms, and explained how the system could scale across enterprise networks without impacting performance. This is incredible, she said finally. The applications are limitless. Banking, healthcare, government, any organization that handles sensitive data would need this technology. Elena, why are you showing this to me instead of pitching it to your current company? Because my current company just promoted someone over me for having better leadership qualities. Someone who thinks security protocols are optional and that charm can substitute for competence. Rachel smiled. And you're thinking it's time to build your own company. I'm thinking it's time to stop waiting for other people to recognize my value and start building something that demonstrates it. We spent the next 2 hours discussing market opportunities, funding strategies, and the practical steps involved in launching a tech startup. Rachel knew investors who specialized in cybersecurity ventures, and she was confident that my technology could attract significant funding. There's one thing you need to consider, she said as we prepared to leave. Starting a company means leaving the safety of a regular paycheck. It means taking responsibility not just for the technology, but for sales, marketing, legal compliance, team building. Are you ready for that kind of risk? I thought about Sophia, about the example I wanted to set for her. I thought about all the times I'd been told to wait my turn, to be patient, to prove myself in systems designed to overlook people like me. I thought about Marcus, sitting in the promotion I'd earned, making decisions that put our clients at risk. Rachel, I've been taking risks my entire career. I've risked being overlooked, undervalued, and passed over for people with half my qualifications. The only difference is that now I'm going to take risks that might actually pay off. She grinned. Elena Rodriguez, CEO of CloudBridge Solutions. It has a nice ring to it. That afternoon, I returned to CloudBridge with a different perspective on everything around me. The motivational posters seemed hollow, the open plan office felt constraining, and Marcus's enthusiastic greeting felt like background noise from a life I was already outgrowing. Elena, just the person I wanted to see. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I realize I might have come across as dismissive of your concerns. I really value your input, and I want to make sure we're collaborating effectively. His sudden interest in collaboration was transparently motivated by the Morrison crisis and Sarah's obvious displeasure with his performance. But I was no longer interested in fixing Marcus's mistakes or teaching him how to do the job I should have gotten. I appreciate that, Marcus. I've actually been doing some thinking of my own. Great. I'm always open to fresh ideas. What did you have in mind? I looked around the office, at my colleagues bent over their keyboards, at the conference rooms where I'd pitched ideas that had been implemented by other people, at the corporate hierarchy that had consistently failed to recognize my contributions. I've been thinking that maybe it's time for me to explore new opportunities. Marcus's relief was almost comical. Oh, well, of course career growth is important. Are you thinking about transitioning to a different team within CloudBridge? I'd be happy to provide a reference for any internal positions. Actually, I'm thinking about something outside of CloudBridge entirely. His expression shifted. Elena, I hope you're not making any hasty decisions based on recent events. Change is never easy, but I really think we can work together effectively once we establish better communication patterns. It's not about communication, Marcus. It's about recognizing that some environments aren't designed for certain types of success. That evening, I began drafting my resignation letter. But unlike a typical 2-week notice, this letter would include something else entirely. A detailed proposal for CloudBridge to license my security technology as an external vendor relationship. If they wanted to keep benefiting from my innovations, they could pay market rates for them. And if they declined, their competitors would be eager to gain a technological advantage in the rapidly evolving cybersecurity landscape. I was done being undervalued. I was done watching less qualified people get promoted while I did the work that kept our clients safe and profitable. I was done accepting that brilliance without charisma was somehow less valuable than charisma without substance. Sophia knocked on my office door around 10 p.m., holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Thought you might need this," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Thanks, Mija. How was your day?" "Good. I got accepted into the advanced computer science program at the university for next year." She paused. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said about building something better, instead of fighting harder in a broken system." "Yeah? I think you should do it. I think you should stop waiting for them to see how amazing you are, and show everyone else instead." I looked at my 15-year-old daughter, so wise and confident, and realized that my decisions weren't just about my career anymore. They were about the world I was creating for her generation. "What if it doesn't work? What if I fail?" Sophia smiled. "Mom, you've been succeeding in a system designed to make you fail. Imagine what you could do in a system designed to let you win." The next morning, I walked into Sarah's office with 2 envelopes. One contained my resignation. The other contained a business proposal that would change everything. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she opened the first envelope. Her eyes scanned my resignation letter twice before setting it down and reaching for the second envelope. I watched her expression shift from confusion to surprise, to something that looked like genuine respect as she read through my business proposal. "Elena, this is extraordinary. You've built all of this independently?" She held up the technical specifications for my security system, pages of documentation that represented 2 years of late-night development and weekend testing. Every line of code, every algorithm, every protocol. I have timestamps, version histories, and independent verification from beta testing sites. It's completely separate from any CloudBridge intellectual property. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying me with new eyes. "And you're offering to license this technology to us rather than taking it to a competitor?" "I believe in giving current relationships the first opportunity, but Elena Rodriguez Technologies will be launching regardless of CloudBridge's decision." The name felt powerful leaving my lips. Elena Rodriguez Technologies. Not hiding behind a corporate structure that had consistently undervalued my contributions, but standing proudly as the architect of my own success. "What kind of timeline are we looking at for your decision?" "I need an answer within 72 hours. After that, I'll be presenting to other potential partners." Sarah nodded slowly. "Elena, can I ask you something? How long have you been planning this?" "I've been building the technology for 2 years. I've been planning the business for 2 weeks. I've been ready to leave for about 10 minutes. She almost smiled at that. "What changed? What made you finally decide to take this step?" I thought about Marcus's careless attitude toward client security, about all the times my expertise had been dismissed or appropriated, about Sophia's fierce belief in building better systems instead of accepting broken ones. I realized that I was trying to solve the wrong problem. I kept thinking I needed to prove my worth to people who had already decided I wasn't valuable enough. But the real problem was that I was asking the wrong people for validation. After leaving Sarah's office, I walked through CloudBridge's hallways with a strange sense of detachment. These spaces that had felt so important just days ago now seemed like sets from a play I was no longer performing in. Colleagues who had avoided eye contact when Marcus got promoted now looked at me with curiosity, clearly sensing that something significant had shifted. I spent the afternoon cleaning out my desk with methodical precision. 4 years of accumulated artifacts, commendation letters from grateful clients, photos from team-building events where I'd always been positioned slightly outside the main group. USB drives containing backup copies of projects that had launched my career. Each item told the story of someone who had been excellent at her job but terrible at playing corporate politics. Marcus appeared at my cubicle around 3:30, his usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. Elena, heard you might be making some changes. Hope there are no hard feelings about the promotion thing. You know I've always respected your technical abilities. I looked up from packing my personal items. Marcus, do you know what our biggest security vulnerability is right now? He shifted uncomfortably. Well, there are always multiple threat vectors to consider. Our biggest vulnerability is having someone in charge of client security who doesn't understand the difference between a firewall and antivirus software. That's not a technical problem, Marcus. That's a leadership problem. His face flushed red. Elena, I think you're being unfair. Leadership is about more than technical knowledge. It's about vision, inspiration, bringing out the best in people. You're absolutely right. Leadership is about vision. And my vision doesn't include watching incompetent people make decisions that put our clients at risk while I clean up their mistakes for less money and no recognition. I closed the last box and stood up, meeting his eyes directly. Marcus, I hope you succeed in this role. I genuinely do. But your success or failure is no longer my responsibility. The finality in my voice seemed to shake him. For the first time since joining CloudBridge, Marcus looked like he understood that charm and networking couldn't substitute for actual competence when real consequences were on the line. That evening, I received a call from Janet Morrison. Her voice was warm but concerned. Elena, I heard a rumor that you might be leaving CloudBridge. Please tell me it's not true. Janet, I appreciate you calling. It's true that I'm making some changes, but I want to assure you that your account security won't be compromised. Honey, I don't care about the account. I care about losing the most competent professional I've worked with in 20 years of running this company. What happened? Did they finally do something so stupid that even you couldn't fix it? I found myself laughing despite the seriousness of the conversation. Something like that? But Janet, I'm not disappearing. I'm starting my own company, and I'd love to discuss how we might work together in the future. Elena Rodriguez, if you're starting a cybersecurity company, Morrison Industries wants to be your first official client. Name your price. After ending the call with Janet, I sat in my home office feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement about my professional future. Sophia knocked on my door around 8 p.m., holding acceptance letters from 3 different universities. Mom, I got into MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon. Full scholarships for computer science at all 3. I jumped up and hugged her, my heart swelling with pride. Mija, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Which one do you think I should choose? Whichever one feels right to you. You've earned the right to make that decision. She sat down across from my desk, studying the business plan I'd been refining. Mom, can I ask you something? Are you scared about starting your own company? Terrified, I admitted. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my career watching less qualified people make decisions while I do the work that keeps everything running. Good. That means you're taking the right kind of risk. The next morning brought a call from Rachel with news that would change everything. Elena, I presented your technology to the partners yesterday. They want to schedule a formal presentation for next week. But there's something else. Do you remember hearing about the massive data breach at Meridian Financial last month? Of course. Hackers accessed customer financial records for over 2 million accounts. It's been all over the tech news. Their CTO called me yesterday. Somehow word got out about your security system, and they want to discuss an emergency implementation. Elena, they're talking about a 7-figure contract just for the initial deployment. I felt my breath catch. 7 figures. More money than I'd made in my entire career at CloudBridge. For technology I'd developed in my spare time while being told I lacked leadership qualities. Rachel, how did they hear about the system? We've barely started discussing it publicly. Janet Morrison mentioned it to someone at a business networking event. Word travels fast in the cybersecurity world, especially when it involves technology that could prevent the kind of breach Meridian just suffered. That afternoon, Sarah called me into her office for what would be our final official meeting. Her expression was serious but respectful. a marked contrast from our previous interactions. Elena, the board reviewed your proposal. They're prepared to offer you a significant counterproposal to stay with CloudBridge. I handed her my business card. Elena Rodriguez Technologies is growing rapidly. We're always looking for talented engineers who understand that competence and character matter more than corporate politics. 6 months later, Maria joined our team as a senior developer. Within a year, she was leading her own project team and earning more than she'd ever made in corporate environments that had consistently overlooked her contributions. As I write this, Elena Rodriguez Technologies has grown to 43 employees across 3 offices. We've prevented over 200 attempted cyber attacks for our clients, saved them millions in potential damages, and earned recognition as one of the fastest-growing cybersecurity companies in the Pacific Northwest. But the metric I'm most proud of isn't financial, it's cultural. Our employee satisfaction scores consistently rank in the top 5% of technology companies. Our promotion rates for women and underrepresented minorities lead our industry. Our turnover rate is less than 3% annually. We've built a company where competence is rewarded, where results matter more than politics, where brilliant people don't have to choose between being authentic and being successful. Sophia is now a sophomore at MIT, studying artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Last week, she called to tell me about a research project she's leading on predictive threat modeling. Mom, I think I'm developing something that could revolutionize how we think about network security. Tell me about it, I said, settling in for a long conversation about algorithms and innovation. Actually, I'd rather show you. I'm planning to present it at the Student Research Symposium next month. Would you be willing to be one of the judges? Mija, I would be honored. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the most important thing I'd built wasn't a company or a technology platform. It was an example of what happens when someone stops accepting systems that don't recognize their worth and starts building systems that do. The last text message I received from anyone at CloudBridge came from a former colleague 6 months ago. Elena, wanted you to know that Marcus was arrested yesterday for embezzling client funds. Apparently he'd been skimming money from account maintenance fees for over a year. The FBI investigation is ongoing, but they've already recovered over $200,000. Sarah asked me to tell you that your instincts about leadership and character were right all along. I read the message twice, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication, because my concerns about Marcus's character had proven justified. Sadness, because the warning signs had been visible to anyone willing to look past surface-level charm and ask deeper questions about integrity and competence. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd chosen to build something new, rather than continue fighting for recognition and systems designed to overlook people like me. Grateful that Sophia would grow up seeing what it looked like to refuse to accept less than you deserve. Grateful that 43 talented professionals now work in an environment where their contributions are valued appropriately. They promoted him over me for leadership qualities. He just got arrested for embezzling funds. But this story isn't really about him, or about revenge, or about vindication. It's about the moment you realize that the right response to being undervalued isn't to prove your worth to people who have already decided you're not valuable enough. The right response is to build something that demonstrates your value to people who are capable of recognizing it. Sometimes the best way to win an unfair game is to stop playing it and create better rules instead. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.